I'm Andy Erwin, and this is the Storytellers. In 2018, there was this movie that started off this whole idea of kingdom. There was this little film called I Can Only Imagine. And, the whole idea of what we were doing was at this precarious place. It very easily could have fallen off one side of the ledge or the other, and very easily we could have stopped being able to do what we do. But we risked it all in this little story that was brought to us called I Can Only Imagine. And it redefined everything that we do. So today we have two individuals for you. Both have their fingerprints all over I Can Only Imagine. One, it's literally his story. And so you know him as a musician from a multi-platinum best-selling band, MercyMe, and just amazing individual, one of my best friends. And the other is a filmmaker that has worked in our system for years and is the voice behind movies like Jesus Revolution that he did with my brother. But his fingerprints are all over the original I Can Only Imagine, and you may not know it. So would you welcome on my show today, Bart Millard and Brent McCorkle. So today's a treat because this is just kind of a walk through memory lane as friends. And so today we've got the one and only Bart Millard from MercyMe and Brent McCorkle, director of Jesus Revolution. Welcome to the show, Storytellers, guys.
Thank you for having Brent and myself.
This is going to be like the NPR edition.
Thank you, Andy.
Not awkward at all. Brent, your t-shirt, like the amount of times I've been out with you. So your t-shirt, somehow heartbreak feels good in a place like this. The AMC, Nicole, people come up to you all the time and be like, that Bible verse, I love that Bible verse.
People have no idea what it is. They ask, that's a beautiful piece of poetry.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. This is a $4,000 shirt, by the way. Did you hear the story? Yeah. It ended up tweaking some other people, not AMC. And I was in some interviews and they made us black it out. And so it cost $4,000 worth of VFX to black out the shirt in these interviews.
That's a diva move.
Yeah,
like, I'm a filmmaker. I'm worth it. I'm worth it.
Yeah, so what you're saying is it'll be blacked out during this whole conversation.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
In trouble again.
The next $4,000 shot.
Exactly.
Good stuff. Well, hey, it's exciting to kind of sit around. We always walk through memory lane and talk a lot about our experience on Imagine. And, Imagine was just kind of this magical time for all of us because like our fingerprints are each individually, including my brother, on that final product. And, Brent, you wrote, the script with John, you did the music, you directed second unit, your fingers are literally playing the piano for the final scene of the movie. You're the piano player with a mullet in the background. And then, for you, Bart, for me and you, our friendship, it began kind of, I invited you to a screening of Mom's Night Out and you just moved to town from Texas. Like that moment was kind of a cool connection where you first started talking to me about the idea that Imagine was a movie you're kind of wanting to develop.
From the time the movie came out, I believe it was like 8 years from when Cindy Bond, approached us and said she wanted to make a movie about, she was asking around what the most popular Christian song was. It wasn't asking us, but other people in town. And at the time, it was apparently Imagine and Shout to the Lord. And so
I could have done Shout to the Lord.
I know,
instead.
right? Well, I guess their story, I don't know what we were second. Like, I guess their story wasn't as intriguing or whatever because she had already talked to them and I was telling her about my dad and stuff. And she was like, in tears going, I want to make this movie. And I mean, 100% was like, there's no way there's no way no one's making this movie. And I literally was like, well, knock yourself out. I think you can do it. So for literally 5-6 years, we'd get a check every year or so. And they're like, we're still trying. I'm funny. Like, well, you keep at it. I'm like, anyway, it was just like, I figured, okay, it's not going to happen. And during this time, Andy reaches out to me for Mom's Night Out.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think I came to Mom's Night Out first. That's where I first met you. Got invited to see it. And I've told you this several times. I remember going, comedy has got to be the hardest thing that makes somebody laugh. And I was like, this is actually pretty clever. And And so it went from, oh gosh, I hope I don't have to talk to him afterwards when the movie started, to where is that dude? I want to tell him it was actually pretty great. And then I went back. I went back and watched everything else, and and then loved Woodlawn, and at some point you were like, hey man, I think Captain America was coming out. We should go hang out and see it. And so we're sitting there watching the Avengers, and I remember telling you, I was like, man, where were you? Not even a year ago. Why couldn't it have been you? And I told you the whole story. You let me tell you the whole story about how I got here or whatever. And man, she was going to do it. And I figured it wouldn't happen, but it's been so long that now it's kind of bummed. I just wish it would have been y'all or whatever. And he goes, well, we got the script from her like today or yesterday. Like, we're going to do it. And I was like, what? You let me do all of that and not just stop me and go, hey, she called us and we grabbed the rights.
I was a little starstruck. I was like, I'm sitting with Bart Millard.
Freaking out.
It was pretty cool. And like, we don't sign contracts around here before we watch movies together. Yeah. So the fact that the fact that we went to go see Captain America, like it was already a done deal. Like it's like, I think it was like a midnight screening. So when you're walking me through the story, I think it was like 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah, and if you see us at the theater together, it means we're about to do a deal.
Exactly. It's the movie theater and going to eat at Honeysuckle.
Yeah.
But like, so to kind of flip over to you, Brent, like for us, our friendship started. I had just done my first movie, October Baby, and I got invited to a special screening of your first film, Unconditional, starring Michael Ealy and Lynn Collins. If you haven't seen it, watch it. And I actually still read the book that you feature in the Firebird book. I still read that as a bedtime story to my 7-year-old. She loves it. It's one of her favorite books. So I got invited to this screening, and I don't have any context, and I'm very similar to where Bart was with Mom's Night Out. Like I'm like, I don't know why I'm here. I just hope that it doesn't stink. I hope it's pretty good. And I watched the film, and I think it's a really big deal when you watch another filmmaker's movie and it invokes emotion in you, because we're so jaded and we kind of like, oh, I know what's coming. And there were several moments in there that took my breath away. I got to the end of the movie and I look at the credits, and it's like, same dude wrote, directed, scored this thing, did all the music, did, a lot of the editing, production. Like it was like your name was on there like 50 times. And I went up to the producers afterwards. I was like, hey, who's your creative? They're like, oh, just some guy we hired. We really want to talk about our business plan. I was like, well, forget your business plan. I don't care about that. Who's your creative? And I reached out to you on Facebook that night and just said, I don't want anything from you. I just want to know that you got a fan. I'm a fan. So that's kind of where our relationship started. And then it led into us kind of collaborating over the years. Like, what was it that drew you into kind of being a part of, like, that ended up you being part of this kind of family?
Well, it meant so much to get that Facebook from you, man, because I was really low. I came off that movie really low, and you were going off to do Mom's Night Out. And I just remember you saying, hey, man, maybe we could work together in the future. And I was like, I just remember my heart really being open to that idea. And it's just crazy 10 years later, just what an open heart can do and just what one phone call can do. I've had my life change dramatically, probably that Facebook from you and then one other phone call that kept me in Nashville. But yeah, I mean, it was cool to be connected in that way and for it to come full circle and for us to actually get to work together on some stuff. So
yeah,
we've done a lot.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
And it's been really cool to see the year that you've had with Jesus Revolution kind of, I think, really putting you front and center of the stage. It's been really cool to see that happen. And we'll get to that in a minute. But like, for me, after I did Mom's Night Out, like I was so burned out on that project. And I was in that low place too, because I was like, oh man, I'm exhausted. For anybody that hasn't done comedy, it's really hard to make people laugh. And it was just so exhausting that I had lost my joy of editing. I had lost my joy of telling stories. And I'd always been very kind of hands-on and kind of controlling of like, I want to touch every frame of this film. I don't want anybody else to do it. It's got to be me. And I had lost that desire. And I was like, man, but I just had a hard time trusting anybody to do it. And so I was on a bus in Los Angeles and I was like, I need to hire somebody to work with me on the next one that thinks like a storyteller. And so I called you and I just was like, Brent, I don't want to insult you because I know that you're a great filmmaker, but man, I need somebody to edit this next film with me that thinks story. And would you be willing to take a lesser job editing this thing with me?
Well, I like the script.
Yeah.
I thought it was great. I mean, you had a racial reconciliation movie. You know, for me, I think culture in the West is largely forgotten, like the core tenets of Christianity, which are like love, compassion, empathy, acceptance, belonging. And so to see a really good script come out where Christianity actually changed the construct of racism in the school, you know, and like healed a lot of the racism. I love the script, and I signed on for the script. And obviously I wanted to work with you too, but I just thought, honestly, man, I thought it was a great script. I'd never edited football before, and I knew they were going to be like action scenes, you know, and I edited a lot of football for that movie. So that was just the challenge of it, I think too. But I think what the movie said, I think a chance to get to work with you guys and yeah, knowing that it was going to be a big stretch too, editorially. And then I ended up getting to work on some music.
Yeah, you're like,
too, so that was fun.
We got behind on the music score, and you're like, you know, I compose too, don't you? I was like, oh, okay. So we threw some songs your way, and I was like, this is fantastic. And then we got to the end of Woodlawn, and you're like, you know, I write too. And then meanwhile, we're developing I Can Only Imagine. You're like, this might work. So it's like we kind of get to this point where we're deciding we're going to do Imagine. And then I'm bragging on it to my brother, and I gotten him keyed up for it. And then I was like, you're going to see him at the Dove Awards. And this is where, you know, this band, just watch how they connect with the crowd. It's really special. It's really special. And I was like, I guarantee this is the future. So I key it up, and I was like, they're closing out the Dove Awards. You've got to see this. And then you almost screwed it up.
I did my best. Yeah, let me explain first that, so you get asked to play the award show, like, you know, plenty of time in advance, and it's all on your dime, and everybody, you know, labels, everybody's trying to kind of put their best foot forward.
Right. And Toby Mac always sets the bar so high that you can't even compete.
Totally. But like any
it's like a marching band.
Yes,
and like, you know.
Yes. So like any award show, the opening number and the closing number are the big ones. And so, and we've done it before, but we'd been told, you know, 6 months in advance. And so if you don't get that specific message, you know, you're somewhere in the middle of the show, not a big deal. And so our song was Greater, was the song they want us to play. And about a week out, I don't know what happened, but they said, hey, you're closing the show. And man, we were ticked, dude, because that's like, what? No. Like, we're not Toby, and because we were just going to get up and do it around a mic like Grand Ole Opry style and make it like go the opposite way. And so we were really ticked that they didn't ask. They're just like, hey, this is it.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, I said, I'm totally, because this is going to give it away. I said, we should do something so ridiculous that it's not that they may not ever ask us. They won't tell us a week in advance.
Yeah.
So we were, what became us laughing on the bus going, man, we should have, you know, like, a dump truck load of confetti, and we should get these stilt walkers, like have this circus acts. And
you had like a guy in the corner doing close-up magic.
It was like, wouldn't it be funny if somebody was over in the back doing card tricks, the furthest away from the audience? We had a guy in a banana suit with his dog in a banana suit.
Yeah.
Hula hoops. It was and jugglers. And then a friend of ours he remixed it to where it went from, because Greater's kind of this country thing, and then halfway through it shifts to this emo techno.
He had like a DJ
dance
on this
club thing, and he was DJing in the back. And so it kind of started with us doing.
And I remember there was such a massive amount of confetti that we couldn't see any of it.
And it was a little bit of the point. It was like, you know, but it started us real low key, and then the curtain opens and just all heck breaks loose. And we didn't tell anybody. And we're just like, let's do it. And they'll be sure to never ask us again. Like it was. And so no clue y'all were there to see us for the first time. And you told me later, like, we almost didn't make a movie. But I will say my wife afterwards, and we're giggling, thinking this is really funny. And people in the crowd, like it didn't even make the broadcast. It was so bad. People are just kind of looking at us. And my wife after goes, what was that? And I was like, oh, we just thought it'd be, if we did it so over the top that they wouldn't ask us a week out to close again. She goes, oh, it worked. They're never going to ask you to close ever again.
You may not get invited back.
And then it wasn't
as a guest.
Yes, and it was. You never really told me that till a long time later. You went, I don't know if you knew this, but I brought my brother to sell the whole thing to him. Uh-huh. And then you were like,
he leans over to me afterwards, and there's this awkward silence after everything kind of fades to black, and it gets the audience once it gets quiet. John leans over. He's like, your friend Bart he might be insane. He's like, he's crazy. I was doing a radio show in Tampa, Florida, and I think like Joy FM, one of those kind of shows. And the host asked me, and we were promoting Woodlawn, and he asked me, he said, what are you looking at next? I said, Bart Millard's story. And he said, oh my goodness, I was at the Ryman that night when Amy Grant pulls him up on stage and gives him his song back. It's the most magic thing I've ever seen in music. And I just sat there, I was like, wait, I don't know this story. It's not in the script.
Right.
So I called you. I'm like, hey, did this happen? And you're like, oh yeah, bro, it's the most magic night of my life. I forgot to tell you. I'm like, lead off with that.
Yeah, you were kind of like, I think we have our movie.
Yeah,
like, and
I knew we had our movie at that point.
I didn't know how movies work, and I was like, oh yeah, that happened. Yeah, right. Yeah, and now seeing the movie, I'm like, what was it going to be before this?
I know it just
bananas,
and it was like Bart's dad died, and he wrote a song, but it was like that was the point where, and my brother is very cinematic, and so he kind of really envisioned this kind of moment, and then Brent and him discovered it on the script, like of this moment where the audience kind of disappears in this moment of a father standing in approval of his son, that's kind of universally relatable, is kind of like the climax of the film. And John was like, everything needs to lead to this. And that's when we knew we had a movie. And so with Brent, at that point with you guys, we talked to you and we just said, hey, we had a great experience on Woodlawn. Let's go once more around the block. And Woodlawn was a financial disappointment. Like, it was a movie in our body of work. It's still one of the films that I'm the most proud of. Like, it holds up.
Rightfully so.
It's a good movie. And the DNA of it is also what kind of led to Jesus Revolution. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But, we said, let's go once more around the block. We found our story. We found true stories. That's where we're like, this is our kind of story to tell. And we tell underdog stories of people finding kind of their moment in different, venues. And we're like, we feel like this has all the DNA. So John decides to write the script with you. Like, as you guys kind of crafted the story, what was kind of the genesis and the thought process of like discovering what this movie needed to be?
Yeah, it was cool. It was my first time co-writing. And so what would happen is I was just in my flow, man. Sometimes I'd write like 20 pages and I would finish my day and hand them off to John, and he would like edit them down and put them, so he's kind of
like being a paragraph out of it.
Yeah, he kind of ended up being my editor, and it was fine, but I was just like this crazy thought generator. I was really prolific at the time, which is different for me. So I was able to just hand him a lot of kind of raw stuff that he could use, even in his pages. So yeah, it was fun, man. We vibed. It was cool. It was a cool vibe, man. It was a cool collab. Probably the coolest co-write I've ever done, honestly.
Yeah, and we were like trying to figure out like, what does this movie need to be? And then we had like going into it, like, what were your biggest fears, Bart, as we started kind of bringing your life to life, like not knowing what to expect?
Probably the best thing that happened to me was not knowing what to expect, because if I had any major fears, which I don't think I had any major ones, but there'd be moments to where it may feel like it was too late to speak up, because like I didn't realize that was a fear until it's either already on paper. It's never too late, but not knowing the process, it's like, I'm looking at the first edit of the script going, well, it's written, that's it, and you guys, somebody asked me like, how was the process? And I was like, well, it was challenging and different. There's no textbook to tell you. I was like, what I can say is they're still some of my dearest friends. And so if I'd be willing to work with them again, I think it went pretty good.
Yeah.
And, but there were moments like, and you guys were, people always ask, is the movie exactly? And I'm like, dude, it's 25 years of my life in 2 hours.
It's portrait.
And they were very good about explaining to me how to look at this. And I said, I think it was Dennis Quaid, the first time I met him was he was about to start filming the scene where he's told he has cancer. Like, I walk in, it's like, you can meet him afterwards. And I was like, I don't even remember this, but it happened. And you don't know how it's going to hit you. And even though he's pretending, but he had Millard on his work shirt and stuff. And when they told him, it punched me square in the face. Like to where I got in my rental car and said, I'll come back when we're doing something else.
Yep.
And then I drove back to getting hit over the head with a plate. And I was like, man, I'm really thinking these scenes great. But he told me, he goes, man, the only advice he gave me was like, hey, I know this is going to be tough. He goes, just have your non-negotiables. He goes, obviously there's going to be things, and we've had some pretty great conversations, because, anybody in my shoes when this happens, your first thought is, well, this isn't, my house didn't like this, or you get so lost in the weeds. And now I get it. I think we were both adamant, like, man, without getting an R rating, we wanted to show the abuse because the redemption story would be that much stronger.
Yep.
And you guys handled that with kid gloves, like, you know, remember talking through, like getting hit over the head with a plate. You know, in reality, he threw it across the room and hit me, but it was like, it was all there. And I knew when I first read the script, the pain in my stomach reading it was like, I think we're onto something because I can't keep reading.
Yeah, I mean, for us as filmmakers, like it's always an interesting dance where, I mean, we've done 6 or 7. I've lost track of how many true stories we have done. And it's always an interesting dance that you want to paint an accurate portrait of the person. So it's like, you know, a lot of filmmakers, they actually just push the real life people out, and it doesn't end up like the movie The Vow, when that was done, about the girl that loses her memory and doesn't remember her husband. When they did that movie, the version that ended up on the screen is nothing like their story, except the initial kind of context to it. And, you know, and it really broke the hearts of the people that it was about, you know, from what I understand. For us, we kind of lean the other direction. Is we see it as a partnership with a real life person. We like to invite them in, and it has to be this. There's this tension that happens because we have to explain this is what we have to do to make this a movie format, to make this a satisfying movie, and not a expensive photo album. But we want it to be honest to your emotional journey, and so there's that handoff back and forth, that nice tension, and then when it satisfies both, there's something that's a beautiful representation. And I think Dennis Quaid gave you some really great advice in the initial part, is at a couple of moments where you're like, oh, it didn't happen exactly like this. He's like, the things that they don't get, that they don't tell, let it go. And that's just for you.
Yeah. He said, just keep that in your back pocket. Like there's some things that just don't need to be on the screen. And the way he actually died, he goes, what they have is beautiful. He goes, hold on to it. Like, He goes, what happened actually happened.
Yeah.
But that thing right there, like Dennis was like, I think it's even cooler the fact that the most obvious thing that could have the movie revolved around completely, you were willing to hold on to. And it was cool. Like he really helped you, and Dennis especially. And I don't know if it's like the things you had been telling me, you know, when you're starstruck and meet Dennis Quaid, I call it the father of the bride syndrome. It's like Steve Martin tells his daughter it's cold outside. She blows him off, and the fiance's like, it's cold. She's like, oh my gosh, you're right. I'll get my jacket. It's like sometimes another voice has to say it for you to hear it.
Yeah.
It sounds like ministry. But Dennis was kind of reiterating the things you were saying. And I was like, yes, sir, Mr. Quaid. You know, like it was just to hear it from him. But because the beautiful thing about movies is, that's when you about the intangibles is, hold on to what's important to you. And he's like, it doesn't matter what kind of house you were in or what color the football team was. He goes, let them do their job of what looks amazing on the screen, but the reason you would agree to this movie, like what's the core of that? And he goes, protect that. And you guys were amazing at, if I ever spoke up on those things, like you guys were so amazing to like, well, then we'll fix it and to massage it and get it right to where it was like, yeah, it was, like I said, I had nothing to compare it to. And, and it could have easily been like, well, that didn't work and never be friends. And the fact that we're sitting here was like, it was, I realized, and I joke about, there's a lot of bad movies out there, and somebody had to believe it was going to be a great movie. And so I thought maybe I have some kind of movie vertigo. Like, what if this turns out to be a bad movie and we just can't see it? We're too close to it. Mm. And like, there were so many emotional things. The first script I got was incredibly emotional. The first time to go see Dennis and film the movie, incredibly emotional. The first time I saw the first edit, incredibly emotional. Then the first time to see it in front of even the smallest audience,
it's a whole different
unbelievably
experience.
Emotional. And then the first time it's opened in theaters and to sit secretly in the back row and hear them laugh at jokes and gasp at things. I have not seen the movie since premiere week. That's the last time I've seen it.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and my kids have turned on, and it's not like it's hard to watch. It's like I saw, and I think it may have been Dennis that said, he told me before a crowd gets in there, watch it as many times as you can so you're separate from it. Like, because otherwise that would be tough. And so like I watched it so much, I know it frontwards and backwards, obviously, but everything, it was just, it was so, and I realized, man, we landed on something, because but when you hear the crowd respond, I was like, oh my gosh, this may actually be good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because how do you know?
Well, it was a terrifying, and Brent, with talking to you, with like, it's a terrifying experience, because there was so much of that was out of our control. Like we ended up self-funding. Mel Gibson ended up saying no to the role that we had written Arthur for. Didn't get Dennis Quaid till 3 weeks in the production. It was like my first day of filming it. And, Brent, you were involved in like every aspect of it from the, you really should have been a co-director on that because, I mean, you were, from the beginning, you wrote the script with John, you scored the thing, you did the music, you did all the live arrangements and music with Paul Mills. And then you edited the movie with me. So you were involved at every aspect. But at like that first day of filming, I went back to my apartment in Oklahoma and I had a panic attack. And your first day of filming is always usually bumpy because you're getting the rust off. You haven't directed something in a couple of years, and you're trying to remember, okay, how do I do this job? And how do I, and even the things that worked on the last one may not work on this new one. And so you're trying to get your sea legs under you. And we chose to work with kids our first day, which was difficult, and trying to find the film. And I went home and I had a panic attack. I was sitting in my room and like my chest is hurting. I can't breathe. I'm like, I know what this is. I'm not going to go to the hospital, but I think I'm having a heart attack. And I just sat there and I had this honest, raw conversation with God. It was like, God, I'm either directing the best movie ever or the worst. And I'm not really sure which one it is right now. This could be a train wreck. This could be a career ender. And then I just had that moment where I was like, well, instead of self-protecting and trying not to look stupid, I'm just going to let go of the boat. And if I drown, I drowned. We're going to swim.
Good.
And there comes this place of abandon. And I think it transferred to the screen. And then we kind of discovered magic moments along the way. For you, I mean, you were involved in every aspect of it. What were the moments that were special moments for you in the making of the movie?
I think I was surprised by a lot of things. I would be surprised by the humor, and I mean, just being blown away, honestly, by Dennis.
Yeah,
I think it's the greatest thing he's ever done.
I do. I agree.
So it's crazy when you're an editor because you do have that same neurosis. You're just like, I need something good, So you're
looking for a building block because you're like looking through all the material and you're like, I gotta find like a foundation for the house.
Yeah. And it would come in. I mean, it would come in. You'd look at it and go, okay, I can do some of this, and it's just, I don't know, man. It's just, the older I get, the more you can't take credit for it. Like you were saying, there's like that letting go, that abandonment, that surrender. And I think just in this particular case, it was meant to be.
The idea with the movie is to tell a story that if people can engage vicariously with somebody's emotional journey, there goes a point where it goes from being your story to their story. And they attach it to their life experiences and they're kind of experiencing it in their own kind of, view and glasses of what happened to them. And I think that's where it's powerful. And I think with a father-son story, there's something universally relatable to that. That's where the Christianity and the faith angle really plays, but in a way that's universally relatable, regardless of what the person's views or experience are. There's something they can engage with that then plants a real seed of idea of redemption that we all want to do. And I think that's the part that's earned. I think the experience of making the movie was one of the most fun things I've ever done in my career. And it's one of those things where you get it to the end of it. And at that point we'd spent, 2 years or so together on this journey. And it's like, you get really attached to each other and then it's over. And it's like, oh man,
right.
Like one of my most fun memories was when we were doing the media tour and I love you because you can be an idiot, but like
what?
but like we were doing these satellite uplinks where they would you do these interviews where you literally, it's mind numbing. You sit in a chair and you're staring at a camera, like looking right at the camera, just seeing the blinking light. They have an earpiece in. You don't even know who you're talking to.
Right.
And they just take you through this network where it's like, now you're on live with this show in Phoenix.
5 minutes. And now you're at Fox.
You're in
now
Buffalo.
You're
You do like 50 or 60 of it at a time. And it can be mind numbing because every single one is asking a variation of the same question.
Yeah. So what's your favorite color every time?
And it's not you guys' first rodeo because you do it all the time for your albums and stuff like that. And I'm a filmmaker that does it like once every blue moon. So you guys had this game of, you would have words that would be put on this whiteboard by the stage manager that I think it was Brickle, your manager.
Well, we used a local crew we didn't know.
Yeah.
And one of our guys challenged us and then everyone got involved.
So they would write like literally like
15 seconds before you go on the air with this new
It'd
interview.
say like insatiable.
Yeah.
Use it in a sentence.
They'd write these 2 words on the board. It'd be like, it started with stuff like insatiable or you know,
and then it went to
stupendous.
red stiletto heels.
Yeah, exactly. Or
Literally.
or garden mulch.
Yeah.
And it's like, how do I work garden mulch into this in real time? So for instance, it'd be like, you know, the words parachute. And you'd be like, oh, Bart, you know, doing a movie about a music, you know, this song that's this beloved by an audience is terrifying. It's like jumping out of a plane without a parachute. Like it could go really wrong. And like, that's how you have to work it in. But as it got to like words like Parthenon,
it got so ridiculous.
It got ridiculous.
So the last one, and I'll never forget it, was...
Well, you realized that I could break because I was starting to I was starting to like crack a smile.
Yes. We're finally somewhere where we know what we're doing. And we're like, because we're making a movie, I have no clue. And we're like, okay, now we got to get Andy.
Yeah.
And one of the last ones was literally red stiletto heels.
Yep.
And they wrote it up, and I'm looking at it, and I'll never forget. It may have been the last. It was either that or Parthenon, but one of the last ones. I was like, they were like, man, the success is crazy. Like, are you shocked? And I was like, I couldn't be more shocked if I walked in red stiletto heels, and Andy's like, and then I'm just like, as soon as we signed off, I get this slow clap like Rudy in the back room.
So that was the second to last one, and I got to where I had tears in my eyes, and Bart's like, oh, it's on. He's got to fully break. So the very last one, the 2 words was an easy one and a hard one. It was birthday and pickles.
Oh my gosh!
And
okay.
so they asked you the first question, and I was like, "There's no way I'm going to get stuck with pickles." So I interrupt you. I'm like, "I'm sorry, Bart. I don't mean to interrupt you, but the fact that you let me do your life story is like the best birthday present anybody's ever given me. I just want to say thank you." And you looked at me like,
I remember.
Game on. Game on. So the lady asked, Bart, where did you come up with the song for I Can Only Imagine? He's like, I remember it like it was yesterday. I was at my father's grave. I was mourning and grieving. My little Meemaw was right next to me. And Meemaw looks over to me and says, Pickles? That was her nickname.
That's
for
what
me.
she called me. Pickles? That's what she called me.
So as soon as he said that, I made the most weird.
And the worst time to crack is when I'm talking my dad dying. Pickles.
And I'm like, oh. And then I'm like,
Pickles? That's what she called me.
And I'm trying not to laugh, but it's like projectile tears just coming out. Oh, they come back from the B-roll show and they're like, and I'm sitting here crying, and I'm like, I gotta explain
it's so
it.
Moving.
And I turned to you, I was like, I'm sorry, Bart, but did she really call you Pickles? And you're like, Andy, I tell this emotional story about my dad dying, and all you can think about is Pickles. What's wrong with you, man? I was like, touche, Miller.
That's awesome.
You know, .1 for MercyMe. But we had like all this fun, and then we get to the end of it, and the band kind of dissolves, and not your band, not your band. Yeah, MercyMe's still around. Sorry, we were here to break the news.
Yes,
but the film band we dissolve, and we kind of look for what's next. And in the meantime, Brent, you know, John does not like slow down. My brother is just, you know, on to the next thing, on to the next thing. It's just part of what makes him good at what he does. I had really just burned it at both ends to get American Underdog done. And I was like, man, I can't go on to something else. And so he and I decided to take a break from co-directing. But he was passionate that there was a story with, you know, everything with Woodlawn, kind of a prequel to that. We end the movie Woodlawn with this magazine cover, the Jesus Revolution, Time magazine cover. And he wanted to tell the rest of the story. And he had worked on a script with John Gunn. And then eventually you kind of bled into that script a lot, of this idea of doing this Jesus Revolution story. So he was trying to figure out what to do. And he's like, I think I want to ask Brent to co-direct it with me. And I was like, you know, there's that moment as a filmmaker where you have to, it's hard to let go of the reins and to be able, like, I have to consciously take a back seat because there's somebody better to tell the story. But in that one, when he mentioned your name, I was like, that absolutely feels right. Because I was like, Brent's a hippie. He's going to pour all of his you know, sensibilities into this story. You're going to get the authentic soul. Like, it's Brent's story. So you stepped into that, and to watch you guys, when the movie came out, to watch it have its moment, and to really, you know, you had put, you know, 10 years into that moment of really kind of selflessly serving our visions on different things and doing your own stuff. But to kind of have that moment where you were able to kind of step into the spotlight and me kind of step back and be like, man, well-deserved, and you did your thing. What was that experience of Jesus Revolution like for you?
The script was amazing. And it was cool. And I know, you know, like working with John, right? I don't know, life, I don't know if you guys resonate with this or not, but like trying to do the starving artist thing for a long time, it's kind of beats things out of you where I don't know, man. I really went into that. Just, I'm going to go along for this ride. I'm going to work as hard as I can, but there's going to be a bunch of amazing people around me, and I'm consciously going to have a good time. And that's what I did. And I went in a lot less angsty. I really my younger me was a very angsty artist. Like if I didn't get my way,
I think all of us are as filmmakers at some point. Maybe probably songwriters too. It's like, you know, you take it way too seriously.
Right. Yeah.
Take yourself too seriously.
I was, man. Very much so. Took the craft too serious. Took it all too seriously. And I think sometimes maybe you end up maybe not doing your best work when you're like that. So I just went in much more open-handed, much more in a posture of surrender, and just there to work as hard as I could and serve. And I don't know, man. I got to cast a lot of the movie. That was incredible.
This is a killer cast.
Thanks, man. I mean, it's, you know how it is. It's raised by a village. So we had amazing people coming our way, but just watching the tapes and figuring out how to put it all together was really, really cool, really fun. And then I got to do my hyphenate thing. You know, they let me do some rewrites, and I got to edit it with my, you know, got
a lot of the humor that came out of it. Like you really championed a lot of the humor too.
Well, that was really cool. I don't mean to knock people down a few pegs, but it's not the script. It was the actors, man.
Yeah, Jonathan Rumi.
Yeah, just letting the actors have an extra moment to bake at the end of a take. Like we got 30 extra jokes because these guys were just so funny. I mean, you had Kelsey Grammer sitting there. It's like we would just wait. You know, when they said their lines, we would just be like, and he would say something funny, you know? Yeah. So yeah, just getting the right people on the bus and cast, and a lot of very humorous people. You know, we got a lot of levity, but it was a cool journey, man. I had a good time. We worked really hard to set a positive culture because, as you know, film sets can become very toxic.
Very. I've had some that I've run that I didn't do a good job of doing that.
Yeah, and you really have to make it like a high value target, and we did. And when you're, as you know, when you're helming a pirate ship, you know, you want the best sailors in every position, and so we had that. And
I was super proud of. I mean, to see the work, you know, be able to maintain the way it was, and then actually get better. Like I was really proud of the final product. You guys killed it. You know, got to collaborate on some music right at the very end, but we had a good time.
Yes, thank you. You know, it was cool having you be one of my producers, because you would come in and go, "Nah, it's not working," or whatever, you know, or hey, you know, it could be this, and you actually gave me the greatest composing note that's ever been given to me in a career that saved a scene in the movie. And so, yeah, it was just cool to be able to collab with you there.
I had a lot of fun, and I was so proud of you, and then to see the audience resonate with it. You got to see an early cut of it, Bart, like, because you're like, we maintained a really close friendship on a film level, like, because we both love movies, and like still to this day, if we want to get together, it usually revolves around a movie theater. So like, what were your initial thoughts when you first saw the movie?
Man, I was blown away, and it was this amazing progression, because, you know, after Imagine, there was this, you know, with Lionsgate and everything, there's this kind of strike while the iron is hot, not knowing that a pandemic was on its way. And, you know, I look back at, like, I still believe the Jeremy Camp movie, where the world stopped literally during that premiere.
That weekend, yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, you know, it was heartbreaking, because, I mean, people got to see it, but just didn't get its fair shake or whatever. But it was like, I think from your very first movie, you obviously, it's like there's this progression to where everything is like, regardless of budget or whatever, like there's a brilliance that keeps growing and getting better. And it's like, man, and when I saw GS Revolution, I was like, it just felt like everything came to a head. I was blown away by, like, from soundtrack to it being a period piece, and mine was always the humor of it. Like, it was funnier than I didn't know what I was expecting.
Yeah.
And it was just like, oh man, this is what it could be when you get to play with grown-up toys, you know, grown-up things is what it felt like. And I was blown away. And then, you know, and then it's like, then you start like fighting for it. Like, please God, let people see this. This is actually legitimately good. And when it became one of the biggest movies they've had since pandemic, it's like, man, it just, you know, it's like, I felt like I was a part of the movie, and I wasn't at all. And I'm just like, I'm fighting for it. Like, yes, let's go. And so excited, and was pushing it like crazy, man. Cause, you know, it is a competitive world, but literally in the faith-based world, we're all kind of in this together to where it's like support them all and we get to make more.
Yeah.
And this was like, yeah, it's the best work. Like I love Imagine, but this is like the best thing I've seen done.
It was the kind of the dream of what we wanted Kingdom to become at some point was this idea that, up front, it was a lot of heavy lifting by me and John having to be like the brand that kind of started it. But the goal was to eventually get to a place where the Kingdom Story kind of company was a place that was a home for creatives, that once you're part of our family, you're part of our family. Like, it's not because you have a desk or a job here. It's because we all love making movies. Mm-hmm. So with Jesus Revolution, it was kind of a really cool experience for me to cheer for something that, I had very little to do with the final product. I had little brushstrokes here and there that I maybe added an idea, but not much. But the story was fantastic. And to be a producer on that, I was really, really proud. I think, kind of for us, the desire is when you enjoy working together, you always want an excuse to do something else. Mm-hmm. Like the way you keep loyalty amongst filmmakers, you just like, what do you want to do? What movies do you want to do? Let's make that. And so we're always like throwing around ideas. Like even since Imagine, you and I have batted around, half a dozen ideas that have been really good ones. It just, we haven't found that
just because we want to do something else together.
Exactly. Yeah. Just like, let's invent something, even if it means writing a comic book that we can do a movie about the comic book. Like,
stay tuned.
So, but kind of a little scoop, and though kind of what I wanted to build to with this one is, as we were talking and dreaming about ideas, I start hearing this, rumblings that it had been pitched to me several different times, but was about like, they're more around one of your other songs. And the thing that kept getting brought up was your song, Even If, which I feel like is the best piece of music you guys have ever done. Like, I really feel like that one is, something even a step beyond Imagine for me. But I had always said, I don't want to go back to the Imagine world if it's a gimmick. Mm-hmm. But then you, Cindy Bond, who was the original producer on I Can Only Imagine, God bless her, has a nose to sniff out a good story. Like, and she's a bulldog. Once she latches onto it, she does not let go of it. And so she had been fighting ever since we released I Can Only Imagine of doing an Even If story. But I was just like, is there a story there? But then you pulled in Brent, and y'all started talking. And then where did that conversation kind of build to?
Early on, with the success of any movie, I'm sure with Jesus Revolution 2, like, Lionsgate or anybody with any common sense, their first thought is, how can we, cash in on it, do a sequel, whatever. With Imagine, I was like, it's not. The story's kind of
like they even talked about doing like a Broadway play.
Oh yeah, they all of that, and it all got thrown around because everyone's happy. It's doing well, and not long after Imagine, Cindy Bond had gone through, her sister had cancer and just and went through a really rough season, and Even If meant the world to her. And so she was like, I want to do an Even If movie. And we were already kind of like, there's no Imagine 2, there's nothing like that. And so it just kind of went away. And then I don't know when the first time you and I talked, it was earlier this year.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Cindy brought it up again, and she was like, hey, she goes, just you name, I'll find the guy to make the stories, you name it. And I was like, I literally know 3 people that make movies, and that's the Erwins and Brent. She goes, Brent, I love Brent. I said, we should get him involved. And I was like, okay. First thing Brent was like, well, where did the song come from?
There were some things that happened to Bart immediately after the precipitous rise of Imagine that, caused a
crash the whole world.
Pretty big crash for him. And like I Can Only Imagine, Even If has brought a lot of hope into people's lives. Yep. And Bart said this in one of his interviews, and I loved it so much. You asked him this question, it was awesome, but it's like, if I Can Only Imagine is hope for after we die, Even If is hope for today in the hard times that we experience in this timeline in our life.
Yep.
This is for us now.
Yep.
And so the two pair together.
And what you said in the moment that kind of sold me when I was talking to both you guys is, I don't know if it was you, Bart, or if it was you, Brent. One of you said, it's kind of like the spiritual sequel to I Can Only Imagine. And then I stopped and I was like, No, that's the actual sequel to I Can Only Imagine.
And it is. It's like, I mean, it's almost like is it a sequel or is it just, it's in that same universe, same characters. And it's just my daughter, my 14-year-old daughter, Sophie, she put it best. I was in the car and I told him, I was like, this is going to be weird, but they may be doing kind of a sequel to Imagine.
Uh-huh.
And they were, what would it be? I was like, well, it's around the story Even If. And my son was like, what is that? How does that work? Is that a sequel? And my daughter said, no, for songwriters, it's not a sequel. You just write the next song.
Yeah.
And I love the way she put that.
That's cool.
And I remember us sitting going, is this about to happen?
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, like when we got on a Zoom call and, you guys are partnering with Lionsgate and we go to them and we start and it's like, I've never been in a pitch and, and you're like, we got to tell them what we're doing. So I'm all nervous and you're probably, you're kind of front and center.
It was intense.
And it's almost like having this flannel graph and all this information. As soon as it turns on, they've got the biggest grins on their face.
Yeah.
And they're grinning. And at some point they're like, we've already said, like they want to say, we
we're
were
obviously
yes
doing
before
the
we
movie.
signed on.
Yeah.
It's like, thanks for, and we're going this whole presentation of,
We're
as
like-
you can see.
We're like, can we finish the
Right.
presentation?
And
And we're like,
we
5
want
seconds
to
in.
do this 100%.
Yeah.
And obviously because of Imagine, but it doesn't happen without Jesus Revolution.
Well, and that was the cool thing is because, we got done with you guys walking me through the story and I have to fully believe something before I'm willing to make it. Like I have to be like, I'm not doing this for the opportunity.
Right.
I'm doing this because it like that feeds my soul.
Same.
And the story that was pitched was like I Can Only Imagine was an incomplete half. And it just finished the story. There was such symmetry. I won't give the details of the story away, but the dynamic of now Bart as the father having to figure out how to connect with his son who's really, really struggling with his health situation. It's like there's a symmetry to that. And then if Imagine the destination is that destination of hope, then Even If it's really about gratitude for the journey. And there's just something beautiful that like I don't see I Can Only Imagine being a trilogy. I feel like it's two halves of a complete story, and Even If's that second half, and it just filled in the gaps. And I was moved to tears when you told me, and then I was like, hey, we can get this greenlit tomorrow, which we got it greenlit like right away. When we got through talking, I was like, Brent, you've absolutely earned your spot in the sun. Lionsgate would greenlight a film with you directing solo for whatever you really want to do. If we prove that there's a market for it, they're totally cool with you being helming it. So you can helm this by yourself. But I'm so emotionally connected to this story. If you'd have me, I would be willing to co-direct this with you. And you were like, that's what it's meant to be. Let's do it. And so for us to step in and co-direct something together, that thrills me and that excites me. I'm excited about what this movie can become. And we're literally going to get done with this podcast and step in the next room and finish out getting prepped to start writing this thing.
To fit in the whole going to movies together, during one of these things, we went to see a movie.
We did.
And I'll never forget this. I was sitting there, and Brent and I have known each other, but I don't know Brent on like a super deep level. And I'm sitting there, and there's this moment in that movie, real touching. And I remember I saw it and went, huh. And Brent's like, and his tears. And I remember looking, going, he's perfect.
It's true.
I was like, he's moved on a different level.
Unabashedly.
You have a 4D emotional experience with films. When I watch a movie with you, like it's all on your sleeve. Like if it moves you, like your whole body convulses.
Yeah,
it's
and it did. I looked at it and I'm like, me too. Like, I'm sad too. Like I was like, I'm not doing it enough.
That's great.
But there was our movie connection. I remember going, gosh, this dude's heart.
Yep.
And so, I'm excited. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
And not nervous at all, just excited.
Yeah. To get the band back together, again, it's going to be so much fun. And just to be able to tell another story and to complete the story that brought us all together in the first place is pretty awesome. On that theme of like, I learned early on with you that you don't like business meetings. And so I'd always say, hey, you want to go to the movies and get dinner? And while we're there, we'll talk a little business. Yeah. And then you finally caught on about the fifth time. You're like, I so look forward to our business meetings.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like it's usually the majority of our life revolves around hanging out, talking about movies or going to the movies. So in that spirit, to kind of finish things up for each of you, favorite film of all time, just can pick one. And why is that one?
That's mean.
Sorry, it's really mean. You got to whittle it down. So, okay. I think I know what you're going to answer, but I'm not positive.
Okay.
I might be off, but go ahead.
You know mine?
I think I know.
Mine is 100% Jojo Rabbit. That's my favorite movie of all time.
I was thinking the one previous to that.
That
you
thing
like.
you do?
No, the other one that Taika did, the Wilder People.
Hunt for the Wilder People is stunning, but no, Jojo Rabbit, and it's every emotion you can possibly feel in a movie, and like the humor is the most perfect. The humor that I love the most. Then all of a sudden it transitions. It takes the oxygen out of the room, and then I leave dancing. That's the best movie I've ever seen.
That B-side track with David Bowie's Hero
everything
song,
in German.
Everything in German. Like, it was so good.
Sam Rockwell, one of my favorites. But I like it, and it's like I'll say I have a favorite movie. Like I love Braveheart, but I don't watch Braveheart. Jojo Rabbit stays on my phone. Like I watch it at least once a month. I love everything. Well,
in the poignant moment
it's so good. Tell me you openly wept at the end, though.
Oh,
we watched it together in the theater. We watched it together.
Yeah, when his mom, and then at the end when he starts dancing, I am dancing and crying.
Come on,
dude, and when we can have a whole section. When she grabs it, she goes, "We are the ones that wrestle with angels." I was just like, I love that movie so much.
Yeah, I watched it with you, and I was like, I don't know if I didn't know how I was going to take the movie, and when it took the turn towards him wrestling with this, the idea of what he'd been taught about this people group. And then he befriends the Jewish girl in his attic, and then it begins to really confront the ideology he was raised in, to the point where kind of love conquering the whole thing, and then it resulting in the dancing. It got to that moment, it took my breath away.
And Johansson the dad puts the coal on her face. Don't you ever wept?
Yeah,
and that kid should have won a stinking Oscar. He was so stunning.
He was so good. I went to one of the awards parties that Lionsgate used to host, and
you told me,
and I was out. Yeah, sorry.
I think that night you told me.
Had a little FOMO. I'm sorry, but I always feel awkward in the parties because like nobody cares who I am. So I always go right out at the entrance to the party, and I just people watch for who's coming in, and they'll always, some of the really cool ones will never come into the party. They'll just stick their head in and say who else is here, and be like, no, it's Bulb.
Yeah,
and so. I was at this party, and I was with Caleb Castile from Woodlawn, the actor from Woodlawn, and we're out in the lobby, and all of a sudden I see Taika Waititi come in with Charlize Theron.
Whoa!
And so they were hanging out together, I guess, as friends, and going party hopping. And so he sticks his head in. He's like, "This is lame. We're leaving." So as he's leaving, I grab him, and I was just like, "Hey man, I just want to say real quick." And I got starstruck. And I was like, that Jojo Rabbit movie you did? It was awesome.
He's like,
thanks, mate.
My biggest fan.
and so I ran out of things to say, and he left. But I was starstruck. It was pretty cool. Anyway, Brent, for you,
spiritually, for me, the movie I think that takes me to church the most and what I aspire to is Interstellar.
I totally agree with that.
It's cosmic.
Totally.
It's cosmic. It's mystical. It never mentions God, and yet
proves the existence of God in its theories.
Yeah,
so good.
They basically throw down this idea that like we could live in a universe where love didn't exist and it could still work, but love transcends the time-space continuum, and that's the entire crux of how the movie was built. And I really do feel like Nolan is very talented. I'm taking nothing away from him, but his stuff comes in pretty tactical and cold, and that was just one of the most beautiful, warm, uplifting, powerful movies I've seen about the existence of a higher power.
Well, and to be able to illustrate that, I think the reason why that movie works so well is, the idea of this movie is this 5-dimensional being that transcends time and space using gravity, and then the device he uses is love to communicate from the future.
Yes.
And so, but to do it in a way that's emotional and not tactical like Nolan is because the heart of that story is illustrated through a father trying to do the same thing.
Yeah.
He's trying to reach his daughter through time and space.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden he understands this heart of a father of this 5-dimensional being. And I was like, that's a proof of existence of God. It's beautiful. I wept at the end of that. I think I actually watched that one with you.
It's probably another. That was another moment where I'm probably shaking.
You were shaking the entire row. Right, it was like,
it was a business meeting. Got it. Yeah.
Exactly, it was a business meeting.
What's yours?
Yeah,
man. Interstellar was up there.
Okay.
The one that I would say would be I can't do a tie. I
know one.
Dang it. Like if I'm going classically, it's going to be Casablanca. I mean, hands down. Casablanca.
Never seen it.
Never seen Casablanca?
No, I haven't.
It's good.
I haven't.
next business meeting. Mine is a little off the beaten path. Mine's, I don't know why it connects.
Kramer versus Kramer.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's my childhood. No, mine is Joe versus the volcano.
I love that movie.
That movie, like everything about that movie, it's silly, but it's profound. And like the humor was so over the top, but then like this existential kind of curvy road that this guy takes to this moment of destiny. I love it. And this guy that had been afraid of living, that moment when he's on the raft and he's been trying to keep his dream girl Meg Ryan alive, who's like knocked out from the storm they've been on. They're on this makeshift life raft, and he's giving her his water rations, and he's kind of bleached by the sun and just barely hanging on. And then the moon comes up in this big over the top moonrise, and he's standing there, and he kind of stands and he says this prayer that I think is one of the best faith prayers in any film. But he says, "Dear God, whose name I do not know, I forgot how big. Thank you for my life." And it's this moment of gratitude for the journey. And like, it gets me every time. I could watch that film and I get to the end and I just can't quit smiling. And it's the silliest movie, but it's profound. So that's
we could do an episode of I could come up with a list of short questions and you guys would answer like favorite scene or favorite moment. Yeah. You'd be amazed at how fast it would come up, like how fast you'd be able to answer those questions.
Dude, well, yeah, I mean, you do that. There's a reason why I nicknamed you Rain Man. Is like any artistic category, whether it's like, Southern Gospel album of 1982 by this certain group, you would be able to go 5 deep on like who played like acoustic guitar on that record.
That's amazing.
And so like you always were like, I love that about it. So, well, that's really kind of the show. I think for me, you guys are both dear friends, but I've enjoyed, so much of our friendship revolving around stories. Whether it's talking about movies, going to movies, or making movies, like it's always kind of been that thing. And I Bart, with you as a songwriter, your story instincts are killer. Like there's a lot of other people that are outside of the film world and are kind of coming from the outside in, and their ideas, you just have to humor them. But you make it easy because your instincts story-wise are really, really good. And then for Brent, like to see your ascent to Jesus Revolution and to kind of, I think you're just getting started with finding your stories to tell, like this to be a part of that journey with you and to be able to collaborate with you. And then the idea that we get to kind of get the band back together and do it all over again, I think Even If has the potential to be a killer film. So I'm excited for what's next. Appreciate you guys being part of the show.
Man, what a treat. Every time we sit down with these guys, when we go to the movies, every once in a while together and just have these kind of conversations in the parking lot afterwards. I love every minute I get to spend with Bart and Brent. And I just think that with both of their stories, I think there's just this powerful theme of the ability to be patient for your time. For Bart, after he lived his story, he had been told for years that this would make a movie. And he sat with it patiently. And by the time it hit the screens, it had been in development for 8.5 years. And so the patience it has to do that. And with Brent, Brent did the movie Unconditional, 14 years ago. And he had the patience to work within the system to kind of wait for his story to tell again. Tells it with Jesus Revolution. And now to get everybody back together and to collaborate once again on this sequel that I can only imagine. It's a dream come true for all of us. So my encouragement to you guys is you might have a story and you're like, this is the one I want to tell. And there's this thing of the long patience for a filmmaker to fight and hold on to your story. And it never happens as quick as you want it to, but to embrace those collaborative relationships, and the right relationship comes along at the right time and you're able to see your story get made. So don't quit on it. That's the power of I Can Only Imagine. It's really about hope. When we did the movie, we asked, what is the secret sauce to this song? And Bart said it's a rush of hope. And a rush of hope became the DNA of everything we do at Kingdom. So that's our show today. Just want to thank you guys for joining me. We'll see you on the next episode of The Storytellers.
The Storytellers is a Kingdom Story Company production. It is produced by Nick Carey with production assistance from Ben and Justin Bailey. Our executive producers are Kevin Downs and Brandon Gregory. Social media for the show is run by the team at Troops and Allies, and our music is Twisted Rooster by Tommy Profit. Special thanks to Jaron Weatherly, Evan Johnston, and our entire team at Kingdom Story Company. We have so many exciting guests coming up this season. To ensure you don't miss any of them, subscribe to The Storytellers for free on YouTube at Kingdom Story Company or wherever you listen to podcasts. For exclusive first looks at our upcoming films, behind-the-scenes content, and invitations to advanced screenings, join the conversation as a Kingdom Insider at kingdomstorycompany.com and follow us at Kingdom Story Company across all platforms. As always, thanks for joining Andrew Erwin and his friends on The Storytellers.